Hello, my name is Andy Parker from Landesk Software and welcome to this presentation on Landesk Password Central. Recent HDI surveys have shown that manually resetting passwords can cost an organization upwards of $1 million a year in costs of analyst time and other downtime. With Landesk Password Central, what we're looking to do is deliver a self-service based password reset environment which reduces calls potentially down to zero resolution. The Landesk Password Central approach is really a threefold approach to gain control, to optimize our operations, and to improve the customer satisfaction delivered through our services. Gaining control, we can ensure process compliance. It's important that any password activity is managed within the scope and the guidelines of the business in which it's being delivered. End user expectations are for a quick and simple process, and it also ensures that when passwords are reset, not only are they secure in their own right, but they're actually valid and correct according to the password policies that an organization sets. When we optimize operations, what we're really doing is we're talking about reducing call volume. It's about ensuring that a customer can do something themselves, an activity which in a traditional desk they may be calling up a desk to do. There are many issues with that, not only the time spent on the desk, but also the security side of it. So creating a single point of entry and a single password synchronization point of management is a key to delivering an optimized operation. All of that delivers improved user satisfaction. Customers who can go on, do self-serve password reset and get themselves up and running without any downtime with IT will find a much better service delivery and will provide a better feedback to the service provider. What we're going to do in this presentation is break our presentation down into two sections. We're going to look at the configuration of Password Central and then we're going to look at some operation. So the first part of this is going to be having a look at configuration of the key elements of Password Central. So let's have a look at the configuration of Landesk Password Central. First, we're going to talk about some of the high-level information that we need to set. There's 2 or 3 of those, and then we're going to have a look at the more specific stuff to do with password management. Key to everything that happens within Password Central is the authoritative source. This is the definition of the Active Directory LDAP-based environment which we're going to use to provide our single point of authentication. The whole point of Password Central is to provide that single point of entry and the ability then to manage multiple passwords across multiple systems should you wish to do that. But this is the definition of that. With authentication, there are a number of things we can do in terms of managing how people can access it. Again, this is very high level. There are a couple of areas we're going to set up potentially, but for the most part, it's left as it is. The connectors then allow us to understand what we're connecting to. So having done an authoritative source, knowing where we're going to provide our single point of entry, this will show us all the different systems we're linked to and what the status they are in. Password Central will actually monitor those systems and can notify you if there are any issues with those systems. Again, at the high level, there's the ability to provide some cost-saving information, input some values, some numbers, some stats, and the system can generate some values in terms of how much money using Password Central is saving you. This can be quite good for an ROI calculation, just to feed back in terms of the effectiveness of the service desk. A couple of other things we're going to look at in terms of the management of it is things like the security settings, what we're allowed to do, who's allowed to access stuff at the highest level. Again, most of these settings are fairly standard, but there are some specific ones that might be needed to implement based upon the individual organization's requirements. As far as organizations' requirements are concerned and their very specific needs around their infrastructure and everything, what we suggest is that there's a more specific conversation had to address how the infrastructure works and what values and settings need to be put in place within Password Central to manage that. It's a very flexible tool. To go through all of those options now would be very long, and that's not really the objective of this particular presentation. 1 or 2 other things just to finish off at the top level is the introduction into this concept of task automation. Wherever Password Central is going to monitor some activity happening, you've got usually a couple of options to either integrate that with a tool like Landesk Service Desk, and we'll see that more in a moment, or alternatively to generate email information going out. And there are both task automation and there are also email templates at various places within the product which allow you to configure exactly what gets sent out from Password Central. One of the important things to understand as we go through this is the fact that the Password Central configuration sits hand in hand with Service Desk, and we'll look at the elements of Service Desk that are there. So let's go down now and look more specifically at the Password Central management itself. We'll start at the top of the set of options here. We'll have a look in a bit more detail with these, with alerting. So alerting provides the administrators of Password Central with updates when certain key events happen. So you can see here authorization failures, password change failures, usually the kind of things that we want to know about because they're a potential security risk. And there's some various conditions, there are who gets the emails, etc., etc. So some combinations of settings. Further down there's password expiration notification. This is particularly useful because this allows you to use Password Central as a mechanism for notifying people of the fact that they will need to do a reset, and you can see there that it's about enrolled and unenrolled people, and we'll just talk about that in a moment. And also the enrollment invitation. So to use Password Central as an end user, the first step you need to do is enroll in the system, and we'll show that process in a moment. So I've talked briefly about email templates. Now we can see many more of those, and we can see here as well actually for the top ones that they are all to do with the various actions. So enrollment completion, failed attempts, password changes, etc., etc. There's a whole number of these which are enabled or disabled by purely ticking the box. There are content to those emails. You can add in things, so there's a little link on the right hand side which allows you to see what are the runtime variables to import into new email content, so you can use those. But again, it's the idea is it's a very simple mechanism for being able to generate information. Again, key message here is understanding what gets generated at what time. What we don't want to do is overload people with email, but you do want to make sure that the right bits of information are being sent out at the right time. At the next level, there's the Service Desk delegation. This allows us to enable members of the Service Desk to be involved in password resetting. Service Desk can do it via the phone, although the real key point of Password Central is it's a self-service mechanism. We're going to see that in the next demo section, specifically to a user accessing their own tool, accessing their own system. We're going to see that in the next session, specifically with a user accessing their own system. However, that can be done through a kiosk-based machine or other things, for example, dial-up, etc. Password Central allows us to do some very nice stuff as far as phoning in, using SMS, all that kind of thing. It's not part of the standard configuration, but it is there and capable within the tool, so that's something to bear in mind. Simple stuff when you're managing it, like the license status, seeing how you're going. Obviously licensing and understanding the utilization of your licenses is important. Then we come down to the password policy. So now we're really starting to look at the levels which manage how someone interacts with the tool to reset their password. So we've got some fundamental level ones: minimum password age, maximum password age, when do you do it, how often do you do it. This is password history, password length. This talks directly to Active Directory and sets those settings up. We'll see in a moment with the specific password policy settings that we can be much more granular, and I'll walk through those, but this is the high level setting for password policy. As I mentioned, there's the concept of phone reset. This is not enabled in my system. However, this is you have the ability through a telephone and all the various settings that go with that to reset passwords through that. So again, if you can't get to a kiosk or your own console, then this is another way of doing it. We're trying to put the system in place where the Service Desk itself is not involved in that password process activity unless they absolutely have to be. One of those things that we need is potentially questions. We can drive questions from external feeds, but more importantly, and I'm going to go straight down to that, we have a number of questions that we have pre-built, and you can see here that there are various settings that are in place. We can retire questions and we can add questions up. So depending on where you are, what part of the organization you're in, we can define and add more questions, remove the question. It's entirely up to you what questions you use. If we just click on reports, there are a number of reports which get automatically generated, and again what we can do here is define when those reports get emailed and who they get emailed to. On the frequency on the right hand side you can see. So at the moment we've got an executive summary report, always gets sent to the email on a quarterly basis. There are a bunch of these there, and again this can be done as part of that. So Password Central is providing you with quite a granular level of information about the usage of the system. All in all, the objective here is that it just sits and gets used by your end users and exception reporting takes place. So to have these reports generated is very useful. It's all up to the organization as to how often those reports are generated. From a security point of view, you can see here that there's an identity strength, and this starts to drive how someone interacts with the tool. So the number of questions they've got to answer, the number of failed attempts before you're unenrolled. So unenrolled is effectively like locking the account. So in this case, I've got 6 attempts. I could reset that to whatever I want. Minimum allowed length of identity answers, well, we can set that up so that allows questions to have certain number of characters in their answers, and then we can start to do some more granular stuff like containing words that are in the question, repeating sequences, etc. So again, controlling the way someone uses the tool and what they can actually import in response to questions and prompts is all part of the security setup. If we have a look at this password settings at the bottom there, again, just highlight a couple. Must change password after reset, so the next time they log in, the AD flag will be set, so they have to reset again. So they're not actually resetting their password permanently, they're just allowing themselves to get in. And all sorts of other things, passwords on all systems. It's all of levels to allow the system to integrate and interact with all the other tools. If we scroll down a bit further, there's end user display settings. So it tells you about things like your domains. What am I going to see when I do the lookups? Again, as you can see, a lot of this stuff is just tick boxes. A great deal of these will not change from the core settings that come through with the tool, but we can allow these to be modified. I'm not switched on capture, but capture again, the ability to show graphics on the screen is also part of Password Central. We can allow those things to be used as part of the authentication and security model as we go through. Interaction with the service desk. What can the service desk do? How long is it allowed to access what access accounts? What type of activities can it do on an account? Again, lots and lots of just straight tick boxes, and as I'm saying, I'm not going to go through each of these. The objective of this is to give the feel for it. We can go through these in more detail in a normal demonstration session. Storing the answers, holding on to that information. It's all stored in AD. It's not stored in a database. It's actually interacting directly with Active Directory. And finally, sort of password integration and specific stuff for Lotus Notes where it's required to interact with Active Directory. So a lot of variables and values that can be set and controlled through the security settings. If we have a look at the task automation, this is where we begin to interact directly with Service Desk. So within Service Desk, we have that ability to hold and manage stuff and run a process, and here are those settings. So I've got 2 or 3 of those set up, that if we have failed attempts, if we have a confirmation of a change, a reset, then we're going to send a process automation request across the Service Desk to launch a process, a password reset process, which will then manage the ongoing activities. That process will email the customer, it will also notify them, and also can be used if there is a security breach as a mechanism for controlling that. And I will have a look at the Service Desk processes in the user section of the demo in a moment. All sorts of different actions. There's failure actions. We can see there if they've changed a failure, we'll send an email. Reset tasks, all these kind of things. Lots and lots of settings, mostly pre-built, very easy to enable. Tick the box, it's enabled, and you're going to get automation. From an administration point of view, there's also the concept of unenrolling. So once someone has enrolled, you can remove them from the system. That's a privilege in its own right. Bearing in mind that part of the settings of the security are that if you try to authenticate and you fail, then you will be unenrolled, which is effectively locking your account out. So those are some of the core settings for Password Central in terms of the operation. The last little piece I'm going to look at in this section is about password policies. So what password policies allow us to do is to set up a variety of policy lists that can be applied across different users and groups. We've got one policy set up, but what it does do is it allows us to pick up and see what those core policy properties are. So at its basic level, we've got minimum and maximum password lengths. We've got character-based stuff. We can allow alpha characters. You can see they're force mix cased. We've got the must contains, a minimum and maximum, various property values of types of characters that appear in the password setting. So you're allowing this to be able to provide you with a security-based approach to this, where your password strengths are being managed through the definitions in Password Central. We can have a look in here. I can look at our Windows strong rule. So again, straight switch on and off. This must meet Windows complexity requirements. So the default requirements that are there, they're all laid out as a set of bullet points there. We switch that on, and that password must apply to those password strong rules. Again, specifically to NetWare, same thing as Windows. There are some policy passwords pre-built that need to be enforced. Tick the box, they are enforced. Looked at the length and the alphanumerics. Special characters. Well, do we allow special characters? What are they? So again, you can be very, very specific about whether we allow them, whether we're going to enforce them, and what characters are allowed to be used. So you can see tick boxes there, which allows us to select specifically which of these characters are being done. So as you can see, we're building up a very, very granular definition of what is a strong, secure password. We have word list filters, so we can pick up on things like ensuring that words that aren't used or used, which are common, are prevented from being used in the password, so we can overlay that. In our custom diction, we can also put in words that we don't want, can come from a file or can be manually entered. And then finally with this is patterns. So do we allow people to use part of their user ID? Do we not? How much? You know, again, it's all about ensuring that people are not just putting in something that is a unsafe, unsecure password, so that we can ensure proper authentication, and also, where required within an organization, adherence to security policies and all those types of things. We can then assign those policies off to various levels. You can see here the overall authoritative source at an OU level, at a user level. There's quite a lot that we can do here. So hopefully in that section what you've seen is the fact that the core settings for Password Central are very easy to initialize, and then the ability to manage the way that password is set, reset, how that password is entered, the complexity of that password is very much just a case of selecting options, saving those, and applying those across various elements of your AD from user up to the entire domain, and we can then provide ourselves with a very secure and very manageable password reset environment. Okay, so we've seen some of the configuration options that are available to us with Password Central. Now let's have a look at a short section on the use of Password Central from an end user's perspective. We're going to watch an end user enroll into Password Central, answer some security questions. They're then going to do a password reset and a password change. And more specifically from a service desk perspective, we're going to see how that interacts with the desk, the processes that the desk runs, and some of the feedback that the customer gets as a result of that. Okay, so let's now look at it from a user's perspective. I've got a client now who's logging into his self-service environment, and this is where we can start to integrate Service Desk and Password Central together. So I'm logging into my Service Desk self-service environment. I see I have a Password Central tab on the left hand side, and I'm asked now to tell the Password Central system of my user ID. So my user ID is max.lewis. Click on the agree, and immediately Password Central understands that I've not had an enrollment yet. Now I might have got email notification about the enrollment. We could do it through process, but essentially this is my first step at managing my password. So let's click on continue, and I have to authenticate my existing Active Directory password such that the system knows who I am. And now I'm presented with 3 questions. You remember in the previous section, one of those things that we could set for our users was the number of questions which they had to answer. So let's pick one from the first one. So I'm going to pick my mother's maiden name, and I'm going to select second question, the city I was born in. And you can see here the third question is also the one that could be delivered to the service desk. Again, we can control how many of those are there. So I'll pick my employee ID number. I've answered my 3 questions. I click on continue. That confirms that's my email address. Again, just to continue, and I get a confirmation that I've now been enrolled in Password Central. So I can click again, and I'm now allowed to do various things. I can manage my account, I can unlock, I can change my password, I can test it, all sorts of things I can do at this point. So for example, while we're here, let's look at the idea of changing my password. So there's two pieces to this. There's the fact that I want to change it. I know it already, I've authenticated in, and there's also the situation of forgetting that password. So I'm going to look at my change password to start with. So I'll click on change. It'll ask for my old password. There it is. And I'll put my new password in. And I'll continue. And this is going to look to link to Active Directory to confirm that password's been reset. So everything that Password Central has been done in the Active Directory world. Nothing is stored in the Password Central world at all. So there we are. We have a confirmation. Password's been changed. It tells me whom I am, which domain I'm in. If we were doing multiple password management, then potentially all of the different passwords that are linked to this will be changed. So I'm going to just click on sign out. And I'm going to go back to my main desktop in Service Desk, and we can see here that straight away already has been an incident has been logged and resolved saying I've had a successful password change. If I was to go and look at my email now, I would also be receiving an email which said, oh yes, your password's been changed, and that can integrate with the process as well. So that's the first step. I've changed my password. I'm now able to do that, but I've done that because I've reset based on being already in the system and wanting to create a new one. Let's log out, and let's now do the situation where I've actually forgotten my password. So I'm going to just close this down. I'm going to log off from my account. And what I'll now see when I get to my main screen and I do my authentication is a link which says I forgot my password. And this is now talking directly to the Password Central server. So this is outside of Windows authentication. So I'll put in my Windows account name here. Again, agree to my password. And I get the options I saw before available to me delivered from outside of Windows. So you're looking on here and you're thinking, well, what can I do? It looks like I need to have something changed. I've forgotten my password. If I click on Forgot Password, immediately, because I'm not authenticated into Active Directory, it's going to ask for the security questions I need. So I'm going to answer my security questions. Continue. And because I've got through that security test, now I can go in and I can reset my password. So obviously it's not asking for an old password, it's going to reset it straight away. I click on continue. I get the confirmation. I can now do a sign out. I can close my session. And if I now go back to my password login here and enter my new password, I'm straight away authenticating. That key thing, which is that Password Central interacts directly with Active Directory. There's no middle layer of information. It's all stored within Active Directory. Go into my self-service account, see what's happened in terms of interactions with Password Central, and as my self-service account loads, you'll see against my list of completed support calls is a successful password reset. So each time I'm interacting with Service Desk, that is happening. There is a reset happening, there's a change happening, it initiates a process inside Service Desk, and that process generates an incident. Now, should I have failed in doing something, then a slightly different approach is taken. So let's go out of here and let's look at this from a failure point of view. So again, I'm just going to log off. And I'm going to reattempt that, but I'm going to fail on my authentication in as far as my security questions are concerned. So I know what my password is, so we will have a look at this in a moment. But if I do Control Alt and I forgot my password, again we're back here. Who am I? I'm Max. Let's do a forgot my password, and I'm just going to put some information in here. I get a failure. Now I have to do this according to my settings. There were 6 attempts, so this is my 4th. 5, and on the final one I've now been locked out, so I need to either re-enroll my account or contact my administrator. There's some information there, so there's nothing else I can do now. I can't come in here, I can't do this. If I do max.lewis, this is going to do an enrollment. It's not going to allow me to do anything else. So what do I do? Well, I'm going to log in and we'll see what's happened on process. So the way the service desk processes are designed, yes, I know I've logged into something when I forgot it. But if I open up my self-service environment again, this last little step of how we see things is we'll see that there's a password reset and it's in as failed. So that's notified against the customer themselves, but more importantly, that's also going to be shown against the service desk themselves, and they can then pick up on that. So rather than just completing a process, we've done a successful one, we're actually got an open state where we can start to interact with that and understand why that password needs to be, that system and that access has failed, and what we need to do as a part of that. So that's what the user sees. The last little bit to wrap up this demonstration session will show you what's happening inside Service Desk from a configuration point of view. So let's have a look in console and see what design work we've done to support the integration between Password Central and the Service Desk environment. So first things first, in our incident world, we've created a dedicated password reset process. This process is fairly straightforward. The most important thing about this is the step about testing whether the reset is a successful one. Every time a password event occurs in Password Central, if we've defined it as being an integration event into Service Desk, it calls the password process, and there are two real outcomes to that. Either it's a successful event or it's a failed event. If it's a failed event, you can see that we assign off to the right, it goes to the Service Desk, and then we are going to investigate that and potentially then follow that up. The customer as well can, if they feel that their password reset that has been successful hasn't been done by them, process allows them to take that out and unresolve that, and that can be investigated as well. So that's the core process that is supported inside Service Desk. Supporting that is the use of Service Desk Event Manager to take the inbound calls. You can see here are those calls that we've been, those different events that have been called while we've been doing the testing. And I have a Password Central event process there. Straightforward one, simple mapping of some core information across who's the password for, what was the password type, was it successful or not. So very simple configuration from a Service Desk perspective of a process and an event management set of settings to go with it. And alongside that then is obviously how you might deliver that to the analysts through Web Desk, etc. But those are really just the key steps inside Service Desk that tie directly into the task execution settings that you put together inside Password Central. So that's covered off some demonstration of both the configuration and use of Password Central. Just to finish off this short presentation, we're just going to have a look at some of the features and benefits of Password Central and how it fits into the LANDesk technology set. So in summary, the key pieces around the features and benefits of LANDesk Password Central is its full integration with Service Desk, that ability not only to deliver the self-service environment on a 24/7 basis, but allow customers to be able to access that both through their own client workstations and also through kiosk operated systems. We can manage the passwords, we can synchronize passwords, we can ensure through things like the Hacker Dictionary, the Policy Enforcer, and the policy checking that we're getting accurate, hard to crack passwords which come down and are within the corporate policy rules. Ultimately, what that's going to do is reduce the time and the cost to IT, both from a delivery of the tool as a start point and also from the day-to-day onward management of passwords. So in conclusion, really Password Central provides 5 key elements to the delivery within the LANDesk solution set. The user-oriented IT approach from LANDesk enables users to include the management of their passwords within that self-service, self-managing environment. Driven by automated processes, the authentication of the policy is secure. It provides a simple platform which fits into the overall on-premise or in-cloud delivery of Service Desk. I hope this has been a useful presentation. Thanks very much for watching.